I was peeling off duct tape from a balloon arch when my wife told everyone she didn't love me anymore. Not yelling, not crying, just calmly, like she was reading a weather update. I don't want to be with Rudy anymore. I've been pretending for a while. I'm leaving tonight. And then she went back to eating a miniature quiche. I stood next to the dessert table, holding a tub of whipped cream that had split down the middle, and I swear to God, I thought maybe I'd fallen asleep in the supply closet again. But no, everyone heard it. A couple people chuckled nervously. One guy said, "Wait, is this like a joke?" Nope. I tried to laugh, too. Not because it was funny, but because I genuinely didn't know what else to do. My wife, Marlene, had just ended our marriage during a fundraiser for dog rescues. There were still dogs in costumes wandering between people's feet. One had a little bee outfit. I remember that. I remember because I fixated on it while my life fell apart. She didn't just say it to me. She said it to everyone. And then, like a magician revealing her final trick, she walked across the room and took his hand. Tall guy, red tie, smelled like pine and menace. Never seen him before in my life. They didn't even rush out. They strolled. Slowly. She looked back at me only once, and there wasn't regret or hesitation. Just relief. I didn't leave. I just sat on a folding chair and watched someone refill the shrimp cocktail. My phone buzzed 3 times that night. One from my cousin, just said, "Dude." One from my mom, "Are you okay?" And one from her, Marlene, that I still haven't opened. I don't know why. I think I'm afraid it'll say something final like, "Don't contact me." Or worse, something friendly. I'm not built for friendly breakups. I get emotional when the grocery store discontinues my favorite yogurt. Eventually, I drove home. Every streetlight looked like it was staring at me with pity. The house felt like a museum to a life I no longer had. Her shoes by the door. Her earbuds charging. The smell of cinnamon from that stupid candle she always lit. I lay on the floor for most of the night. Not the couch. The actual floor. Don't ask why. It just felt right. At 5:40 a.m., I heard the lock turn. I didn't move. I just listened as footsteps came down the hall. And then she walked into the living room like she hadn't just detonated my entire existence. Marlene. Same dress. Same hair. Barefoot. No suitcase. No explanation. No apology. She looked at me and said, "I made a mistake." And then she went straight into the kitchen and started boiling water like it was just another morning. But her hands were shaking. Badly. And I swear, there was something red on the inside of her sleeve. I didn't speak. Not when she walked in. Not when she asked me where the tea bags were. Not when she dropped one of the mugs and it shattered on the tile and she barely reacted. I just sat there on the living room floor like an abandoned object while my wife, who had publicly torched our marriage less than 10 hours ago, moved around the kitchen like she was trying to rehearse normal. But it wasn't normal. Nothing about the way she moved, spoke, or didn't speak was normal. She kept looking over her shoulder, kept peeking through the blinds like she was expecting someone to follow her inside. And her hands? Shaky. I mean, visibly trembling. She spilled half the tea trying to pour it. Still didn't explain anything. Didn't even say sorry. Not once. I finally broke the silence. I asked her, "Are you okay?" She didn't look at me. She just said, "I can't talk about it yet. Just give me a few minutes, Rudy. Please." That word, please, hit weird. It was soft. Afraid. Like she wasn't trying to comfort me, but herself. So I sat back down and tried to figure out if I'd gone insane or if this was some kind of elaborate test. But no, this wasn't a dream. My knees still hurt from the hardwood floor. My shirt still smelled like shrimp and disappointment. And my wife was still very much here, very much barefoot, acting like we could just skip past what she did. Eventually, she sat on the couch across from me. She tucked her legs underneath herself like she always did when she wanted to avoid confrontation. Her hair was matted on one side. Her eyeliner had smeared into these strange crescent shadows beneath her eyes. She looked like a broken mirror version of herself. Familiar, but not reflecting right. She opened her mouth, and I thought, finally, here comes the truth. But what she said was, "You can't tell anyone I came back." I blinked. What? Marlene leaned forward like she was going to whisper something sacred, but then stopped. She was shaking her head. "Not yet. Not your mom. Not your brother. No one." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity had finally cracked through. You humiliate me in front of everyone we know, you leave with some random guy, and now you're back. But I'm supposed to pretend you're not. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with this haunted stare. And then, dead serious, she asked me if I had checked my email last night. What does my email have to do with anything? Marlene hesitated. There should have been a message. Around midnight. If you got it, you'd understand. I opened my phone. Scrolled. Nothing. Spam folder? Nothing. Promotions tab? Coupons, garbage, and some chain from my dentist. No strange message. No explanation. I told her that. Her face went pale. Like visibly pale. She stood up abruptly and said, "Then we have a problem." I asked her what she meant, and she just kept repeating, "They were supposed to send it. I told them to send it." Then she ran upstairs. Actually ran. I heard drawers opening, the bathroom cabinet slamming, her closet door creaking, like she was looking for something, but doing a terrible job hiding that she already knew it was missing. I waited at the bottom of the stairs, heart thudding. "Marlene," I called out. "Who's they?" Silence. Then footsteps. She came back down holding a single object, a small black USB stick, one I'd never seen before, clutched so tightly in her fist it looked like it might snap. And she said, "Whatever happens next, you need to know I didn't plan this." And then she walked over to my laptop, plugged it in, and whispered, almost apologetically, "You're going to see things that won't make sense. Not right away, but promise me you'll watch all of it before you say a word." I stared at the screen. The drive popped up with one single folder. Unnamed. I opened it. There were 6 video files, all time-stamped, all recorded during the week leading up to the party. The first file was titled, _Monday_parking lot _1, MP4-inch. And the second one? It had my name in it. At first, I didn't want to click anything. I just stared at the screen like it might blink first. The folder was open. 6 videos. No labels except those timestamp file names. All MP4s. No thumbnails, no previews. Just that generic black box icon with the white play symbol like they were waiting to wake up and ruin my life. Marlene sat beside me, but didn't say a word. She had that look again, the one where her jaw was clenched tight like she was swallowing fire. Her hands were folded in her lap, like she didn't trust them anymore. I could feel her body vibrating with something between dread and desperation. She wouldn't even look at the screen. I asked her again, "Where did these come from?" And all she said was, "You'll understand." So I clicked the first one, _Monday_parking lot _1. MP4. It started in silence. Just shaky phone footage from inside a car. It was clearly a parking lot, maybe a Target or something. There were empty carts in the background, a faded white line painted across the pavement, and I was about to ask why this was relevant when I saw myself on the screen, standing by a silver Camry, talking to someone. But the camera never panned to the other person. Just me. Just me, standing there in a hoodie I don't own, saying words I couldn't hear because the audio was too muffled. I was gesturing with my hands, animated, confident, like someone deep in conversation. But the version of me in that video didn't look like me. Not really. The hair was styled differently. Straighter posture. No limp in the left leg, which I've had since the ankle injury 2 years ago. My stomach twisted into a knot. I paused the video. "That's not me," I whispered. Marlene didn't flinch. "I know." I clicked the second video, _Tuesday_Deli_Mart_3_Rudy. MP4. Again, it was me. This time, inside a convenience store, aisle 4, the snacks and chips section. I was picking up a bag of kettle chips and speaking to the cashier, smiling like I had no idea I was being filmed. But here's the thing. I've never been inside that store in my life. I didn't even know we had a deli mart near our neighborhood. I looked at the timestamp. 3:17 p.m. I was at work that day, on a Zoom call. I remember it because my manager was screen sharing something about quarterly targets, and I muted myself to eat almonds and almost choked when I got called on. "What is this?" I asked again. My voice cracked a little. Marlene looked like she might vomit. She finally spoke. "They started following you 2 weeks ago." I didn't know until I saw the first file. I thought I was going crazy. I clicked the third video. This one had sound. I was walking past a park bench, whistling, and then I said a sentence that made my skin crawl. "You think she suspects anything yet?" The camera zoomed in, shakily, as I laughed. My laugh. But not. There was something off about it. Too sharp. Too rehearsed. Like it was trying to be me, but didn't quite know how. I paused it. My heart was hammering now. This is fake. Deep fakes. AI. Someone edited this. Marlene shook her head slowly. No. That's what I thought, too. But then I saw the fifth one. I skipped ahead. Clicked video 5. It was filmed inside our house. Our kitchen. From the angle of the hallway, where the thermostat is, next to the pantry door. A place nobody would think to check. The video quality was grainy, low light, almost green-tinted. But it was definitely our house. And it showed me, or whatever the hell that thing was, standing by the fridge, rummaging through leftovers, and then pulling out a phone. Not mine. A black phone with no case, no logo. The copy of me made a call. A voice came through the speaker, distorted and mechanical. They spoke in code. I didn't understand most of it, just snippets. Phase 1 confirmed. He doesn't know yet. Her reaction was optimal. Then the call ended. The fake me, this mimic, this imposter, looked straight into the camera, dead into the lens, and smiled. Not at whoever filmed it. At me. It felt like it knew I'd be watching. I slammed the laptop shut. My skin was crawling, every hair standing on end. Is this a prank? Some sick setup? Who filmed this? Who are you even talking to? Marlene looked like she hadn't blinked in a full minute. Her voice was barely a whisper. I think the version of you at the party wasn't you. I almost laughed. Then where the hell was I? She didn't answer. She just pointed toward the garage door and said, check the trunk of your car. I stood in front of the garage door for a full minute before I could make myself open it. You know that weird buzzing you get in your ears when your blood pressure spikes? I had that. Loud, angry static between my temples. I didn't want to touch the doorknob. It felt radioactive. Marlene stood behind me, arms crossed, eyes locked on the floor like she couldn't bear to watch me discover what she already knew. Or maybe she was hoping I wouldn't go through with it. But I did. The garage light flickered once as it warmed up. That yellowish, dying fluorescence made everything look worse, like the scene was already decaying. My car sat where I left it, or at least where I thought I left it. Same dusty windshield, same stupid bumper sticker I've been meaning to peel off for a year. But something was off. Subtle, but wrong. There was a single black scuff on the rear bumper I didn't recognize. I know my car. It's 10 years old, held together by sheer laziness and coffee spills, but I know every dent and scrape. That scuff hadn't been there yesterday, or the day before, or ever. I walked to the back. My hand was trembling when I reached for the latch. The trunk popped with a low mechanical sigh, and then I saw it. A black duffel bag. That wouldn't have been weird, except I don't own a black duffel bag. I stared at it like it might grow legs and crawl away. Eventually, I reached in and unzipped it. Slowly. The smell hit me first, sharp, metallic, with this undercurrent of something chemical. Inside were 3 things: a disposable burner phone, a stained windbreaker, definitely not mine, and a hard plastic case the size of a lunchbox. I opened the case. Inside were tools. Real ones. Surgical. A bone scalpel. Rubber gloves. Small vials filled with clear fluid, labeled with strings of numbers, and what I assumed were chemical formulas. One syringe was used, the needle cap placed neatly beside it. My stomach flipped. I staggered back, knocking into the rearview mirror hard enough to jar the glass. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized what I saw. Pale skin, sunken eyes, sweat beading down the sides of my face like I'd run a marathon in a funeral. I turned to Marlene, who hadn't moved from the doorway. You think I'm some kind of psychopath? I asked, my voice hoarse. No, she said quietly. I think you're being used. Used for what? I snapped. This looks like something out of a cartel movie, Marlene. You saw those videos. You think I did those things? No, she repeated. I think something wearing you did. That sentence should have made me laugh. It didn't. It chilled me. Because deep down, something about it felt right in the worst possible way. I hadn't felt like myself in weeks. I kept forgetting little things. My keys showing up in the fridge. Emails I had no memory of sending. A weird pressure behind my eyes that I thought was just stress. But now it felt like symptoms. Clues. Like something had been knocking on the walls of my brain, and I'd been too tired to listen. I picked up the burner phone, held the power button. It lit up immediately. No lock screen. No passcode. Just a grid of icons, most of them empty. One text message thread. No name. Just a number. I opened it. The messages were short, cold, clinical. Phase 2 begins 11 p.m. Friday. Must separate asset from emotional anchors. Compliance through replication complete. Avoid deviation. Do not return to house after announcement. Surveillance will be active. There was one message that hadn't been opened. A new one. It was time-stamped 1 hour before Marlene came back. Subject error. Anchor did not release. Reassessment required. Neutralization possible. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. Neutralization, I muttered. Marlene's voice was barely a whisper behind me. I think that means me. I felt sick. My mind was spinning, clinging to pieces of logic that didn't fit anymore. I said the only thing that made sense in my collapsing worldview. If I didn't leave the party with you, if it wasn't me, then where was I? Marlene hesitated, and then she said something I will never forget. I think you were locked in the basement of the man I left with. My breath caught. You think? No, she said. I know. Because I saw you there. What? When? Her hands started trembling again. After I left the party, he took me to a house. Remote. I don't even know where. I think I was drugged. But when I came to, I heard screaming through a vent. I followed the sound. And I saw you, or someone who looked exactly like you, strapped to a chair in a locked room, begging for help. I backed away. You're telling me you left me, then found me? She nodded. But you came home anyway? She finally met my eyes. I came home because the version of you in that basement looked more real than the one I'd been living with for the past 6 months. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know what to think. My mind had slipped into a space beyond fear, beyond logic. A kind of psychic vertigo where nothing held still long enough to make sense. Then the lights in the garage flickered, and the motion sensor above the door clicked on. We both froze. Someone had just walked into the driveway. The lights didn't flicker again. They just stayed on, humming with that sterile garage buzz, as Marlene and I stared at each other, both silently counting the seconds like we could delay whatever was about to happen by sheer willpower. Her face was tight with fear, but mine probably looked worse. Not terrified, confused. My brain was still trying to force logic onto a situation that had sprinted so far past it. It may as well have fallen off a cliff. There was no knock, no footsteps, just that soft mechanical click of the motion sensor reactivating, followed by silence again. A silence so thick I could hear the electric whir of the refrigerator inside. Marlene moved first. She backed toward the kitchen door, her eyes wide and fixed on the shadow under the garage door's edge. Then we both heard it, the unmistakable sound of gravel shifting. Slow steps. Someone was just outside. I closed the trunk, quietly, and crept toward the side window. It was high and dusty, angled badly for viewing anything but the neighbor's fence. I had to step on a storage bin to even glimpse the driveway. I lifted myself up, peeked over the ledge, and then froze so completely I forgot how to blink. There I was. Not a maybe, not a vague resemblance. It was me, standing in my own driveway, wearing my old denim jacket I'd lost last fall. Same hair, same slouch, same subtle scar under the right eye from a high school bike crash. He was just standing there, calm, like he was waiting for someone to come out and greet him. He even scratched his chin, my chin, the same way I do when I'm overthinking. I whispered without turning, "He's here." Marlene didn't say anything. I think she already knew. My hands were sweating so badly the plastic around the light switch felt slippery. I had no plan. I wasn't trained for this kind of nightmare. I couldn't even tell if this was a real person or a hallucination cooked up by exhaustion and fear. I half considered going outside and confronting him. Me, whatever. But then he did something that stopped me cold. He looked directly at the window. Not like he caught a movement or heard a sound. He looked at me, right at my eyes through the grimy garage glass like he could see through the dirt, the glare, the fear. And he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A performance. Too wide. Too knowing. Then he lifted his phone, pressed something, and walked back toward the street. A second later, my phone buzzed. One notification. "Hey, just got home. Where'd you go?" It was from Marlene. The real Marlene. Her number. Her tone. Her signature emoji at the end. The one she always uses when she's annoyed but pretending not to be. I turned to her, the woman standing behind me in the garage. She was pale. Silent. Watching me too closely. I held up my phone. "Why did you just text me?" Her face changed. Subtly. Just a flicker. Her mouth twitched. One corner. Her eyes blinked once, longer than a normal blink. Like she was adjusting something behind them. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward. Too smoothly. And whispered, "You shouldn't have seen the videos." I ran. Out the side door, through the backyard, over the fence I hadn't jumped since college. I didn't look back. Not even when I heard the sound of something metal scraping against concrete behind me. Not even when I heard her, or it, calling my name in a voice that sounded exactly like hers, only slightly delayed. Like it was repeating a recording that hadn't fully loaded. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away, out of breath, lungs burning, crouched behind a gas station dumpster like a feral animal. I stayed there for hours. My real phone, not the burner, kept buzzing. Mostly calls from Marlene. One from my mom. One from my job. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat in the dark, alone, trying to answer a single question. If neither version of her was real, how long had I been living with a fake? And more importantly, what if I wasn't the original either? I didn't go home that night. I didn't even go to a hotel. I just kept moving, walking, busing, riding with strangers who didn't ask questions. By sunrise, I was halfway across town, deep in a part of the city I hadn't seen in years. Strip malls that had gone belly up during the recession, old neon signs hanging sideways off buildings that smelled like ash and cheap coffee. It was the perfect place to disappear. I ended up in a 24-hour diner that looked like it had been time-warped in from the 70s. The kind of place where the booths are still held together with duct tape and nobody looks you in the eye unless they're refilling your coffee. I took a seat in the back corner, near the payphone, and tried to calm my hands enough to use the burner phone from the trunk. I needed answers. Proof. Something I could hold in my hands that didn't feel like sand. I called Eric, my coworker, one of the few people who still talk to me outside meetings. If anyone would know where I was last week, if I acted strange, if I'd said something that didn't track, it would be him. He picked up on the second ring. Rudy? Yeah. A pause. Dude, where the hell have you been? You quit 2 days ago. My heart dropped. No, I didn't. He laughed, but it was nervous. You literally stormed out of the all-hands. Told Karen she was a corporate vulture with the emotional depth of dry toast. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was epic. But you were pissed. You said you were done. I didn't even know there was an all-hands this week. Eric, I said, trying to keep my voice level. That wasn't me. Another pause. Okay, what's going on? Is this, like, one of your experiments? What experiments? You told me last week you were working on some identity thing. Like digital persona replication. Some startup weirdness. Said you were being monitored. I thought it was a bit. You were acting off. I hung up. I sat there, watching my reflection in the napkin dispenser warp and stretch every time I moved. I didn't feel real anymore. I wasn't losing control of my life. I was being edited out of it, piece by piece. I pulled out my actual phone, turned it on. The lock screen was different. Not my usual photo of me and Marlene at Big Sur, just a black background. No notifications. No music. No tabs open. My email was wiped clean, except for one flagged message in my drafts folder. I opened it. It was written by me, signed by me, but I had no memory of writing it. Test 06 final. Anchor unstable. ID divergence complete. Observation stage ending. Recommend memory reset before phase loop. No recipient. Just that one sentence. And the timestamp? It had been saved 27 minutes before Marlene made her announcement at the party. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just identity theft or surveillance. It wasn't someone copying me. It was a cycle. Someone was running tests, rounds, loops, and I was the subject. Or one version of me was. I needed to get offline. Get out. Leave no trace. But before I powered the phone down, something caught my eye in the location history. One pin. Recent. A place I'd never been. Labeled only. Dry room/admin lock. I clicked it and saw an address. 35 minutes north. Rural. Remote. I stared at it for a long time. Then I borrowed a jacket from the diner's coat rack, left a 20 on the table, and walked out without looking back. Halfway there, I passed a roadside billboard that had been spray painted over with something strange. If you're not you, stop pretending. I stared at it until it disappeared behind the trees. And when I finally reached the coordinates, I found something I didn't expect. Not a warehouse. Not a bunker. Not a secret lab. It was a house. A small, white, suburban house. Dead lawn. Closed curtains. Exactly like mine. Identical. Down to the crack in the sidewalk and the dent in the mailbox. But when I knocked on the door, the man who answered was my father. Except he'd been dead for 6 years. I didn't move at first. I couldn't. My father had died 6 years ago. Heart attack in his sleep. Quick, merciful, the kind of ending that left more confusion than closure. I had been the one to find him. I'd seen the body. I'd gone to the funeral. I'd carried his ashes. There was no maybe. He was gone. But the man standing in front of me now was him. Not older, not younger. Exactly as I remembered him the week before he died. The same half-gray hair combed back with too much gel, the same faded plaid shirt he wore when fixing the gutters, the same faint smell of sawdust and engine oil. He looked at me with this quiet, exhausted recognition, like someone who's been expecting a visitor for a long time and has finally stopped pretending to be surprised. "You're late," he said simply, stepping aside. His voice was the same too, the low, gravelly tone that used to vibrate through the floorboards when he yelled down the hall. I stood there like a broken machine, trying to process what I was seeing, what I was hearing, how the air in my chest felt suddenly too heavy to breathe. "You can't be here," I said. It was all I could get out. He gave me a look halfway between pity and amusement. "That's what you said last time." The inside of the house was wrong. Not messy, not empty, just wrong. Every room was a replica of my childhood home, down to the crooked family photo on the wall and the little crack in the kitchen countertop from when I dropped a glass when I was 9. But everything was too quiet. No hum from the refrigerator. No ticking from the old clock. No sound of pipes. It felt like a stage built to look like my life, waiting for a performance that had already ended. I wanted to ask 100 things, but the words got tangled in my throat. My father, or whatever this was, walked ahead into the living room, sat in his old armchair, and gestured for me to sit. "You keep running," he said. "Every version of you thinks running will help. It never does." I didn't sit. "What version?" He ignored the question. Instead, he asked, "You still get those headaches?" I blinked. "What?" "The pressure behind your eyes," he continued calmly, like we were catching up after years apart. "Right before the resets start. You always think it's stress, but it's not. That's your mind resisting the patch." Something in me snapped. I slammed my hand against the wall. "Stop talking like you know me." He didn't flinch. He just stared at me with that patient, almost fatherly calm I'd missed more than I wanted to admit. "I do know you, Rudy. Better than you do." He reached beside the armchair and pulled out a thick, black binder. Old school. No labels. He handed it to me. "Read." Inside were dozens of documents, notes, and photographs. The first page was stamped, subject, R. Hawthorne/Cycle 43. My blood ran cold. "Cycle?" He nodded. "You've been in this loop for a while now. 43 iterations, if the logs are right. Each time you get closer to figuring it out. Each time you make different choices. Sometimes you run sooner. Sometimes you fight. Once, you even burned the house down before they could contain you." I flipped through the pages in disbelief. There were photos of me, dozens, in different places, wearing different clothes, some from years that hadn't even happened yet. Each was labeled with a date and a phase number. I saw one from the night of the party, then another from the gas station, another from a hospital bed. "What is this?" I demanded. "Who's doing this to me?" My father stood up slowly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You are." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that didn't come. "You started this project," he said. "Not me. Not them. You. You wanted to see how far the human mind could be copied before it rejected its own reflection. You built the loop, the replications, the anchor tests, all of it. Then you made a copy of yourself to run the first trial." He pointed to me. "That's you. The copy. The one who kept surviving the resets. The one who stopped following the script." My throat went dry. "You're lying." He sighed, like he'd heard that line before. "You always say that." I backed away. My heart was slamming so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. "If I'm a copy, where's the original?" He hesitated for the first time. His expression flickered. A glitch, almost. For a moment, his face seemed to shift, blur around the edges like static on a screen. And when it settled again, his eyes looked wrong. Too flat. Too still. "Gone," he said finally. He couldn't handle what he became. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or laugh. The walls felt closer, the air thicker. I could hear a low hum building somewhere in the house. The same electrical tone I'd heard in my dreams for weeks. The one that always came before everything went dark. I stumbled backward toward the door. "Stay away from me." "You can't run from this," he said again, stepping closer. You can't run from yourself. I bolted outside. The night air hit me like ice. I ran across the dead lawn, not caring where I was going, only that I was leaving. But as I reached the street, I saw something that stopped me dead. Parked at the curb was a black sedan. Inside were two figures in suits, watching me through tinted glass. The one in the passenger seat lifted a phone to his ear. I heard it ring, my own phone, in my pocket. I didn't answer, but a voice came through anyway, faint and distorted, leaking through the static like a whisper from inside my skull. Cycle 44 begins at dawn. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I wandered. Streets, alleys, old park trails choked by weeds and silence. At one point, I sat on a bench and watched the sky lighten from indigo to gray, then finally crack open into the dull, amber blue haze of morning. I had never been more awake in my life, and yet I felt like I hadn't truly woken up in years. Cycle 44 begins at dawn. The voice kept echoing in my head, not like a memory, but like a command. And with each minute that passed, I could feel it getting closer. That strange pressure behind my eyes again. The static in the back of my skull that warned me when something was about to break. I kept blinking hard, trying to shake it off, trying to prove that I still had some say in what happened to me. I walked into a convenience store around 7 a.m., unsure of why I'd even gone in. The clerk barely glanced up. I grabbed a water bottle. When I went to pay, I caught my reflection in the plexiglass divider, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something I recognized. It wasn't the hair or the clothes or the bloodshot eyes. It was the choice. I didn't know if I was a copy. I didn't know if this world was real or just another closed loop designed to study how I reacted under pressure, heartbreak, fear. But in that moment, I realized something they couldn't control. I could stop playing their game. So I made a decision. Not to run, not to fight, to stay still, to not reset. I left the store, found a quiet park bench, and I sat. I powered down every phone. I took the SIM card from the burner and crushed it under my heel. I took the USB drive with the videos and tossed it into a sewer grate without ceremony. I deleted every message, every file, every log they had left like breadcrumbs. And then I just waited. The sky got brighter. The headache faded. No one came. No one chased me. No reset. No blackout. Just the sound of wind moving through leaves that had started turning orange at the edges. Just a dog barking 2 blocks away. Just real life. Messy, boring, unfinished. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it. Hours passed. Eventually, a woman sat at the other end of the bench. Didn't say anything. Just read a paperback with a yellowed spine. At one point, she smiled at something in the story. That smile hit me harder than any revelation I'd had in the past week. It was unremarkable, ordinary, human. I was alive. Not because I had answers. Not because I uncovered some grand secret and destroyed the system. But because I chose not to surrender to a world that wanted me confused, broken, replaceable. I went home later that evening. My house was empty. Clean. No doubles. No watchers. Marlene was gone. Or maybe she never existed here. I didn't know. But the house was mine again. I took a long shower. I ate real food. I played an old record I hadn't touched since college. And then, at midnight, I did something small but powerful. I opened a blank notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "I am Rudy. I choose what happens next." I closed the notebook and left it on the kitchen table. No alarms went off. No loops restarted. Just silence. Just peace. And finally, after so many versions of me had failed, this one lived.